So, firstly, I wanted to say hello. And I guess my biggest question is, why do so many women have hormonal issues these days? I feel like people struggle hormonally. Maybe it's just because I'm struggling, so I asked the question, like, are you struggling as well? But why now? Like, why are women struggling so much?
Well, I mean, it's a big, hairy, gnarly question because really to answer it properly, we have to unpack a bunch of things. So I'll go there. I would say um, in my first book, the reasons why I felt that women were struggling more now than ever before had to do with the fact that we were being besieged by endocrine disruptors. And endocrine disruptors being things that we find in our skincare products, our makeup products, our household cleaning products, what your neighbor is using in the yard, what's in your water supply, what's in the air. We have more chemical exposure today in 30 days than your grandparents had in an entire lifetime. Oof. So I'll just say that again. You currently are exposed to more chemicals in 30 days than your grandparents' generation was exposed to over the course of their entire life. And we know this because we can actually track chemical load in a newborn, like just fresh out of the oven. And there's an enormous chemical load that's being passed and transmitted through the placenta of the mom. So that's a great, baseline litmus test of how much chemical exposure are humans being exposed to. And these chemicals mimic estrogen in the body. They're referred to often as xenoestrogens. And as a result, they interfere with your endocrine system. And so if you're trying to have normal ovulation, that could be a little off, affected. If you're wondering why your period is really symptomatic, or you're dealing with, ovarian cysts chronically, or fibroids or something, of course, if you have excess estrogen in the body of any sort, whether it's your own produced estrogen or estrogen that's coming from the environment, that's going to be stimulating the estrogen receptor sensitive tissues in your body. So that's one piece of it, but I wasn't satisfied with that because I was really encouraged, actually. I wasn't satisfied by the answer to the question because I got like a little, I guess, excitement / hope about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I'm sure you guys remember the menstrual movement that was taking place online, right? Like these young millennial girls were free bleeding and posting pictures of this on the media, on their Instagram, right? They were like, look, I bled through my pants, and who cares? Because why should this still be a taboo? Because it's 2000 and whatever, And I thought that was actually so brilliant because they were changing a cultural narrative that majorly needed an update, and it actually spurred industry growth. So you guys know companies like Thinx and Lola and all these like created by women for women organic menstrual product companies arose out of this renaissance, so to speak. But a renaissance means that it existed before. So I don't know what to call it. This movement to normalize just talking about periods in general. And I got really excited about that, Tam, and I thought, okay, here we go. This is going to kick things off. Finally, we're going to have an opening in the media to talk more about it. And in fact, there were so many articles about how to have a healthy period, and there were several years in a row where both Well and Good and Mind Body Green made menstrual health a trend. And I was one of the trending, thought leaders. And I was like, this is wonderful. We're finally going to turn the corner. And in my mind, the corner meaning less women with hormonal problems. Mm-hmm. And why? Because we had more access, right? Everybody could find this information online, and we had more content about your period. for the first time in recorded human history. This is a really special phenomenon that was taking place. And I thought, okay, more content plus more access should equal more healthy women, less hormonal problems. And then I started digging into the data. It is actually, and this is one of the reasons that caused me to write my new book, In the Flow. 47% of women are struggling with hormone issues.
And I never thought I was one of those until I started to track. You have an app called My Flow.
Yeah.
And it sends my husband notifications like, it doesn't say this, but pretty much is saying like, get away from her for this week. But I really struggled hormonally post-baby. And a lot of my mental health is connected to my cycle. And that's when I was like, I need to go more in depth to why am I anxiety-free, depression-free, I feel great in this period of time only. And then in this period of time, I really struggle with my sleep. I really struggle with panic. I really struggle with my moods and anger. And this small time, and it happens like clockwork. And I don't think that people realize how your mental state is really connected to your hormones. And what I didn't realize either is, when you have your ovulation, there's also a weird rise of hormones around that time that I wasn't paying attention to either, because I would have 3 days of like just being irritated. And so it's really your book of trying to, and that goes to my next question, like, what do we do? I guess the first thing is to realize that there's a problem. And then the next thing is to realize, now, what do we do about it?
Yeah. So you're actually beautifully putting a picture frame around the second thing. So problem number one was that more and more women are getting sick. And when I looked at the data to compare to, let's say, the male cohort, like how many men are suffering with hormonal issues, like if it's almost half of women, it's like under 10% for men. And I said, well, why is that? And these two things that I found when I tried to answer that question shocked me enough to write another 400-page book. And so the answers are: one, women are being left out of medical fitness and nutrition research. So that means every single diet, every single fitness program that you have tried or are thinking about trying is not going to help get you healthier in the ways that you want. And I'm going to explain why in a minute. And then the second thing that I uncovered was that we have a second biological clock that has a name, and it's called the infradian rhythm. So you all know about your circadian rhythm, right? It's what helps you wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night, and it controls when your blood pressure is naturally higher, when it's naturally lower. It controls when your bowels are more active, when they're less active. It controls a lot of different things, the circadian rhythm. It's so important and valued now in research that 2 years ago, two dudes got awarded the Nobel Prize for discovering the genes that control your circadian rhythm. But women, from their first bleed until their last bleed, have a second biological rhythm called an infradian rhythm, and you've never heard of it before. Mm-hmm. And it controls many different functions of your body, like Tammin, what you were just saying. It controls your brain. In fact, in 1996, Dr. Catherine Woolley from Northwestern University discovered by doing brain scans on women that your brain changes structurally by 25% over the course of the month. And I'm going to explain what that means to you in a minute, but you are not the same person week over week, and that is a very advantageous thing. And I'll explain more why.
You sure? My husband does not think so.
when you're balanced, right, you're having all sorts of hormonal imbalances. When you're balanced, it's a huge superpower. So it affects your brain, your metabolism, your microbiome, your stress response system, your immune system, and your reproductive system. So of course, because we're being left out of all this research and we're being told, hey, do high intensity interval training workouts every day. That's going to get you the results. Hey, do intermittent fasting. That's good. Do keto. All of that is being researched on men. And guess what? When you do it every day the same way, you disrupt your infradian rhythm and you make all 6 systems of your body, your brain, your immune system, your metabolism, your microbiome, your stress response system, and your reproductive system become suboptimal in their performance, meaning start to have symptoms and problems. So this experience that you're having, Tammin, is directly correlated to the degree to which you are either supporting or not supporting this infradian rhythm. So this was an enormous, revelation when I was able to piece this all together. And then I wanted to create the solution. So the solution, which is in this book, In the Flow, is called the cycle syncing method.
Mm-hmm.
And what it simply means is that because your infradian rhythm that you experience over the course of the month, you experience the circadian rhythm over the course of the day and the infradian over the course of the month. Since you're not the same, since your metabolism changes, I'm going to break this down for you so you know exactly how it's changing and why you need to change. But you need to change what you're eating, which workouts you're doing, and what you're working on. These are the 3 pillars of the cycle syncing method. You have to modulate what you're doing when, right? So that you can support this changing infradian rhythm and start to thrive, not just in your health, but really in your life. I mean, if you're trying to be up to things and have projects come to life in the world, this is the fastest way for you to do that. And by the way, this is not a novel idea, taking advantage of one's biological rhythm. Guess who's been doing that for millennia?
Men.
Yes, right? Why do we?
It's not men. Yeah.
No, it's men, right? And this is, in fact, I mean, I'm not trying to take a political tack here at all, but the patriarchy, through the lens of biological rhythms, which is how I view everything, is simply a society that has structured itself on male biological rhythm, right? Because the male biological rhythm follows the circadian clock. Mm-hmm. So when men go to sleep at night, they make all their testosterone for the next day. Every day is the same. They should wake up at the same time. If you got, this, I just have to get off my chest. Anybody here have been told have heard about like the power morning routine? Can I get some hands? Power morning, like if you wake up early and like do all your things in the morning, then magically you will have the best life ever and be super successful. Yes. That is true if you have testicles.
Oh, that's why I don't have testicles.
And if you don't have testicles, then what happens is, because you have the more complex brain, and what I mean by complex is not complicated, I mean you have denser, bundled nerves, more synaptic connections. It's a more powerful brain. Because of that, you need 20 minutes more of sleep every night. So if you're in a heterosexual relationship and you've bought into this idea, like, oh, I should be waking up at 5 a.m., the 5 a.m. club, the power morning, whatever version of that you've heard from all of these male gurus who are teaching it, and you do that to yourself every single day, you're going to do damage to your endocrine system, your fertility, your sex drive, your mood. You will become quickly anxious, depressed, gaining weight. I mean, it's ridiculous how bad this is for you when we live out of sync with our biological rhythm. We know that it's so important from a circadian point of view, but nobody is talking about the infradian rhythm and why. Unfortunately, just good old-fashioned gender bias, and I'm here to put a stop to it. That'll be my little soapbox for the moment. But let me break down some of the things you need to know about your infradian rhythm, because this is the keys to unlocking everything for you. Let's start with metabolism and stress response, because I think so many of us struggle with having a relationship with our bodies and weight the way that we want, and energy, right? And so what we hear all over the place in the cultural narrative, as we like to say, like out in the ether, the things that you hear are, oh, well, women have a slower metabolism compared to men. So in order for us to achieve the same results, we have to restrict more calories and work out harder and consistently every day, right? We've heard this. Since I can see you, we can interact a little bit. Yeah. So that's actual BS, like legit, straight up, not true. You want to know what the truth is? Let me break it down for you. in the first half of your cycle has 4 phases: the follicular, the ovulatory, the luteal, and the bleeding phase. This whole thing is called your menstrual cycle, and it is governed by the infradian biological rhythm. In these 4 phases, your metabolism is going to change. So in the follicular and ovulatory phase, your metabolism is slightly slower, and your resting cortisol levels are slightly lower. And this means that you can eat fewer calories and do cardio and high intensity interval training to your heart's content. And the combination of this trifecta, if you imagine like a little triangle of slower metabolism, lower resting cortisol levels, and the right diet and exercise, this yields, if you combine those things together, you gaining maximum amount of lean muscle and burning any stored fat that you have as fuel effortlessly. Right? If you do this after ovulation and into the second half of your cycle, the luteal and the bleeding phase, if you do that, if you continue to do like a smoothie for breakfast and a salad for lunch and fresh air for a snack, and then you go and you do a boot camp class and you just do it, and you have your Nike slogan keeping you in the class, right? Guess what happens? Documented, proven. Turn on fat storage, turn on muscle wasting. I first encountered this phenomenon. Oh, and increased anxiety, insomnia, and depression. I first encountered this phenomenon 10 years. I mean, I've been taking care of women for 20 years, Tammin. 10 years ago, there was this trend of, there's always some trend for women to get fit, always some new thing for women to buy into, to work on their bodies, because boy, they're just such a problem. They need so many things to do to help them, evidently, which also, when you understand the science, it is so far from the truth. It is crazy making. Anyway, the women would come into the center left and right saying, I don't understand what's happening. I'm doing the triathlon thing. This was the trend about a decade ago. Let me train for, anybody train for a triathlon? Okay. Mandy did twice. Okay. I hope this didn't happen to you, Mandy, but this happened to every single woman I saw. She was running, biking, cycling 5 miles or more a day, eating what the coach for the group was telling them to eat calorie-wise. And after she was done, after several months, lost her period and gained 20 pounds. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm glad that didn't happen to you. Okay. But this, of course, makes a tremendous amount of sense, because when you do the same exercise and eat the same calories every day and ignore the fact that your metabolism has changed, because what changes in the second half is that your metabolism speeds up in the luteal and the bleeding phase, and you need almost 300 more calories per day. Documented, researched, factual. And all your conditioning that you have bought into from all this incorrect science in the cultural conversation that says, oh, you just have a subpar metabolism as a female and you just have to restrict. Then you keep restricting post-ovulation, and guess what? You're going to turn on fat storage. And then if you keep doing the high intensity interval training post-ovulation, you're going to turn on muscle wasting. So this is such an important, accurate way to understand the female body in terms of optimizing metabolism and muscle gain and fat usage, that the U.S. women's soccer team is using their understanding of the infradian rhythm to train their female athletes more accurately, more effectively. And that's really a huge breakthrough and a huge milestone, because every single coach that coaches a male athlete, you better put your money down and believe the fact that they are totally factoring in their circadian patterns and their testosterone patterns into their training and into their nutrition to optimize their lean muscle gain and fat burn, right? You would never ask a man after 3 p.m. to do heavy weight training. Why? Because he's already burned through all of his testosterone for the day. He'll get injured and he'll gain fat. If you want a man to put on lean muscle, he's got to get up at 5 a.m., That's where the 5 a.m. club comes from. He's got to get up at 5 a.m. because his whole body has now just released the full dose of testosterone that he's made while he's been sleeping. He's got to get up. He's got to get working out. And then he's got to get right to work, because around 3 o'clock, not only does he lose access to all this testosterone, but he also loses access to a lot of cortisol. So his mental focus and his physical stamina drop off around 3 in the afternoon, which is why biohacking is so popular among the guys, because they're trying to figure out how to compensate for this every single day, like clockwork, energy drop off. You as a female do not have this problem, because we are the ones that 3D print the tiny human beings, whether you choose to do that or not. Nature has given you a much more stable energy reserve, cortisol pattern, and nutrient extraction ability, right? You get more out of the food that you eat. Your immune system is stronger. Your metabolism is more sophisticated. It's pretty awesome, actually. But if you don't know that it's a changing pattern and you keep doing what the guys are doing, which is exactly what you're doing, then you disrupt this whole thing and you have symptoms. And that's just with metabolism and the stress response. So if in the second half of your cycle, you go to a workout class that you went to, let's say the week before when you were in the ovulation phase, and the week before you flew out of that class, you felt like, that feeling when you come out and you're in your ovulation phase and you're like, I could do another hour of that. Okay. Then you go back the week later in your luteal phase and you're like, geez, when is this over? And then you walk out of there and it takes you hours to recover from that class. You're all nodding your heads. This is what infradian disruption feels like. It kicks you down. You are down and out. You just put yourself in the hole, and then it can take days to recover, right? And then that's one time. Imagine doing that for half of the month, every single month. You see?
Because of you, I don't exercise during my period, and people think it's so odd. But I do walks.
Well, you can exercise. You can
like walks and meditate, yoga, but I don't do the hard hitting exercise because
you can't do it after ovulation. You can't.
Yeah. I mean, I do that, but that's probably why I've got messed up.
That's probably why you're still having these luteal phase symptoms of feeling, insomniacal and edgy, right? You've got to commit to working with your system. I know it's hard. The fear is that if we don't push our bodies, because of that conditioning you've received, it's no small thing. I mean, every single woman has been told that their body is going to betray them, that you're going to just get fat in an uncontrollable way. And you have to beat that back at every possible turn with discipline, right? Every single woman has been exposed to that thought. And it's not true. I have sustained a 60-pound weight loss for 20 years. I put 45 to 50 pounds on during my pregnancy and lost that effortlessly by working with the science of my biological rhythm, period, pun intended. It doesn't have to be effort. It's supposed to feel good and be effortless. So all I ever ask a woman to do is just do it as an experiment. What's the worst thing that could happen, Tammin, if for 3 months you committed to no HIIT training for 10 days out of the month during a luteal phase, right? Instead, you do all sorts of strength training without a cardio component, like heavy weights, Pilates till your pants fall off, right?
Hopefully. I think it's just what has been ingrained in us as women, that to not exercise, you will lose. It's a control thing, and you think that you're not in control of your body or your weight if you do that. But it's funny that you say that, because around my wedding, I was almost 100 pounds and I wasn't trying. I was just eating whatever I wanted. I'm sure that was stress, but I wasn't exercising. I was so overly stressed and walking and doing things that I lost like 15 pounds. And I look back at that and I go, I wasn't going to the gym every day and doing soul cycle classes and doing weight training. And I was in really good shape, probably too thin. But it's interesting that your body is telling you something, one question I really wanted to ask you is what foods, because I know in your book, you talk a lot about dairy, and I've just recently given up dairy. The whole household has actually. Why is dairy so bad for us, and what other foods really disrupt our hormones? I really want to talk about that so other people can hear.
So it's really cow dairy that's the problem. But for example, my daughter, she's young, she still needs some calcium. She certainly gets it from all sorts of she loves kale, so she's getting it there. And I do a lot with sesame seeds, roasted sesame seeds, and I make things with that to give her some extra calcium. But yogurt, goat yogurt is what she has. She doesn't like milk, and I don't blame her. Milk is kind of an odd thing to drink, but yogurt and goat yogurts and goat cheeses she has whenever she feels the urge, and also buffalo cheeses and buffalo milk, but buffalo yogurt really. So the problem with the cow dairy, at least in the United States, it's not always the case in Europe, but in the United States, they decided to breed a particular cow. I think it's called the Holstein cow because it's bigger and it produces more product, meaning milk, per cow. In Europe, they use Jersey and Guernsey cows, which are smaller cows made for smaller farms, which is more of the European style farm. Mm-hmm. And these two different breeds of cows produce two different proteins. So casein is the protein in milk that's problematic. It's problematic if it's A1. Okay. That A1 casein, which is from that Holstein cow, even if you do not have lactose intolerance, right? It does not matter. That A1 protein will tear microscopic little perforations in your small intestine. And then once you have this leaky gut, everything else you're eating that you could have sensitivity to or not will get into your bloodstream and create an autoimmune response. And quickly you will have, leaky gut syndrome, right? So I think it's important if you're raising young children. I saw a couple of them sneaking in the frame here. Goat, sheep, and buffalo. That's fine because that's all A2 protein, and you can give them as much as their growing bodies are craving without worrying that you're shredding their intestinal tract and creating inflammation, right? Mm-hmm. So that's for the children. For women, same thing applies. Why would we do anything different for our children? We should do the same thing for ourselves. You want to have A2 dairy. So that's goat, sheep, and buffalo is perfectly fine. However, if you have long-standing things that are still resolving, like PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, there's histories of different types of female-specific cancers in the family, you want to be sensitive to consuming dairy products because they have growth hormones in them. And so if you just want to be sensitive to that, right? So certainly choose organic in the A2 family, but you can feel confident and comfortable doing it on occasion, right? For example, I may make my daughter a gluten-free pizza, homemade pizza dough, and then put buffalo mozzarella on that, right? Slice it up. But the real, really made with buffalo milk, not that it says buffalo on it. It has to be, you have to see that it has buffalo milk in the back. And then I'll have that with her. I might make that for her once every 2 months, and I'll have a slice with her. It's okay. My body can handle that because I so rarely have dairy. So it's about, you don't have to ever think of some food as being a never food. It's really about frequency and quality, and the healthier your system becomes, the better you take care of it, then you can tolerate more, random things. Like, let's say at this point, not that I really have, especially now that we're all in lockdown or whatever we're in, but let's say I'm at a family gathering. No, this is a real phenomenon. Let's say I was visiting my beloved grandmother, not that she's with me anymore, and she had decided to make me some homemade spaghetti with her bare hands. She grew up in Italy, and the food that came out of this woman's hands was like magical. Even though gluten and me are not friends, I'm not celiac. If my grandmother were to make that, I would sit down and have that blessed, loved, the energy in that pasta. I know would not hurt my body because it'd be like once a year, and because she put all this love into it. I would do that any day over going to a restaurant where they took a box of dried pasta that has been sitting on a shelf for 10 years, gluten-based, and then I would ask for the gluten-free version, right? So frequency and quality makes an important difference, but you also have to see, like, where are you with your goals, you know? If you're still having, I have no active symptoms now of any sort of, you know, constipation or issues that were, you know, plaguing my gut from years of having too much exposure to gluten and dairy. Once I recovered from that, my experience for the past 20 years has been that I can have an occasional uh, experience of gluten and dairy and it not be an issue at all. So I think that's an important perspective to have, because when you're just starting out, it feels like you have to be so strict, and the body does not really require that for its healing purposes unless you are severely ill, which most of us with hormonal issues are not severely ill, or meaning, or you have celiac, or you have, you know, serious lactose allergy. If you're just sort of dealing with the occasional bloating and PMS and things of that nature, you can be much more relaxed about it. Mindful and not orthorexic. And that's an important thing, because I think that's another side effect of the diet culture that we all have to worry about as women, is we want to do it the right way. We want to get results. And so there's this, it can turn into this sort of like orthorexic like behavior. Like it has to be all or nothing. It has to be the perfect thing. It has to be all organic. It has to, you know, your body doesn't need that. It needs you to show up 80% of the time, really giving it what it needs. And then life, the vicissitudes of life, the natural fluctuations of life, going to a kid's birthday party and celebrating with a few bites of the cake should not harm your body if it's healthy.
Why do you think that so many women, I know a lot who are on today, have had babies? I feel like there's a massive hormonal shift after you've had a child, and it's almost impossible, feels impossible to recover from that. What happens after you give birth, and why is it so hard to get back into balance?
Oh, such a good question. I was just having a whole session on that earlier today. This mom, she's 41. She just had her, she has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and she is struggling at 41 with some more advanced signs of perimenopause, which are a sign of premature hormonal aging for her age, for her chronological age. She's having symptoms that are beyond her chronological age. And we talked about her postpartum recovery plan. And she's like, what recovery plan? And I said, okay, that's the problem. So the problem is that in this country, in the Western culture, we do not appreciate some realities that take place for the female body when it 3D prints a tiny human being. I use that expression so that we can try to understand it in a way that it feels external to us, because, you know, it just happens. But can you imagine if a 3D printer was able to make a human being, how much effort that would take? Your body just does this. How does your body just do this? Well, it recruits massive amounts of micronutrients that you have in your body at that time to form this being, right? And that's why prenatal vitamins are so important. That's why preparing your body is so important. And so we give a lot of education to women about prenatals and taking them consistently through the pregnancy. And then we just abandon the women as soon as the babies come out.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, great, now just get your body back, be exactly the same sexy wife you were before, be in a good mood, even though you're not getting any sleep, and have another 5 babies as soon as you can. You know, I mean, it's that's sort of I'm being a little exaggerating here for effect, because the pressure that women are put under is a little insensitive. You know, there's a new term that you all should know about. For example, it's called matrescence. And this is like pubescence. Turns out, and you can Google matrescence and TED Talk, and you will find this woman. I cannot remember her name. I put her in the new book. She has pioneered by looking at brain scans of postpartum women, the fact that the changes in the female brain during pregnancy and postpartum that are permanent are more significant than the brain changes during pubescence. And why that's an important frame of reference is because we give teenagers a wide berth culturally. Say, oh, they have puberty brain. Their brains are changing so profoundly from childhood to young adulthood that we have to factor that in. But again, like when you didn't know you had an infradian rhythm, you were messing with it. And just like when we don't culturally acknowledge that we have changes in the brain that are massive for women postpartum, we don't factor that in. We end up hurting ourselves more because we have this huge blind spot. So correct information is vital to women's thriving. That's the first thing. The second thing is, so we have to have different conversations about what recovery from pregnancy looks like and really means emotionally, psychologically. Second, we have to address the massive micronutrient depletion fact, right? Being pregnant depletes nutrients. Giving birth is nutrient depleting. Even if you have a natural, healthy birth at home, let's say you have a more complex birth, C-section, blood loss, trauma, right? That's even more depletion. And stress. Now we're talking about cortisol. Anytime there's too much request of cortisol, it throws everything off with your period, with your hormones, with your mood. So, and then you have this baby, right? Then you've got the baby at home and the baby's not sleeping and you're not sleeping and you're trying to do everything by yourself. And you may even have another child already on top of that. And the culture says that, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, that daddy goes back to work and maybe you have to go back to work. And somehow, even if there isn't a nursing station in the office, you still have to figure out a way to get breast milk to the baby because breast is best. So much pressure, stress, depletion. And you have no sense of what to do. So the critical thing is that postpartum, the first 3 months, just about postpartum, you have to take very seriously in terms of your recovery. We refer to that as the 4th trimester. And you need to be eating as if you are in an extended menstrual phase, right? So for those of you who are familiar with the cycle syncing method, you can refer to the food chart in the flow and look at the foods that are recommended during the menstrual phase and just be eating a lot of those foods. So a lot of women are so worried about losing baby weight after they give birth. When they come home, they start eating foods that look like salads and smoothies and things. And it actually can not only prevent you from losing weight postpartum, but then it can actually create hormonal havoc short-term and postmenopausally. In Eastern cultures, in Asia, this 4th trimester, for the first 40 days, you're not even allowed to really be up on your feet for too many minutes during the day, because actually, and this is true, I checked this with myself, at around the 40-day mark, your body will have 2 different temperatures. If you take the temperature of your body from your right armpit to your left armpit, will be 2 different temperatures. Until your body starts to synchronize again, you're not allowed to get up and walk around and cook a meal in Asian cultures after you give birth. They know that if you nourish a woman properly for that 4th trimester, when she's postmenopausal, her bones will be stronger, her heart will be stronger, her brain will be smarter. Why? Because when you protect your hormones in your reproductive years, you bank the protection of your brain, heart, and bones, right? We don't know how to do that in this culture. And so we get this so wrong, and women then are plagued after they give birth for this like ongoing malaise of postnatal depletion that then spills over into their perimenopause journey that becomes more acute, more symptoms, their sex drive. Your sex drive is supposed to get better every year as you get older, actually. And if you're feeling like you have a lagging libido postpartum and that just never goes away and you're now perimenopausal, that can be traced back to this inadequate postnatal care that you had. So it's frustrating. I wish this were a happier story, but our lack of correctly describing what is going on in the female body, coupled with the lack of transmitting that knowledge to women, is directly resulting in women having health issues that are completely avoidable and totally unnecessary. And have been for 20 years, and certainly experienced it myself in my own health issues 20 years ago. So frustrated by that I've dedicated my career to trying to fix it.
Well, you've changed my life, and I'm sure everyone else's right now. I did want to open up to the chat. If you see at the bottom of your screen, everyone, you can write some questions, because I know everyone, is fascinated by what's happening and wants to change. And I think the main thing here is, firstly, to get your books, because the 2 books that you have will explain these different phases and what we can do through exercise and diet and supplements that can try to get us back into balance. And then my next thing would be to download the app, My Flow, because it's really interesting to see that your period is sometimes all over the place. And so when you think you're ovulating, you're not ovulating. Hello, second baby. You just kind of you're getting it wrong. And I think if you're aware of what is happening, I think that you can understand what's happening to your body a lot more. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, you just go to ask. Anyone? Everyone's being very quiet. It'd be great to hear about soy.
What about it?
I'm sure it's terrible.
No.
Isn't it? I thought it was terrible. I've been off for 10 years.
It just depends. It just depends. So, for example, I think that it can be a really helpful tool depending on your age and stage. So if you're perimenopausal, I think using fermented soy has well-documented health benefits that you should absolutely use. And fermented soy is the key. So tempeh, miso, natto, right? When Dr. Oz had me on, they built me a giant soybean. This thing was like I'd never seen anything that big before. It was so crazy. And we took it apart, and because we wanted to talk about good soy versus bad soy. So bad soy is essentially soy protein isolate. So if you're taking any soy protein powders or enhanced soy milk that has this soy protein isolate, or anything that is soy based where you read soy protein isolate, that's the stuff that you want to avoid. That's it's disruptive to your system and can be very difficult to digest, and does not confer all the well-studied, wonderful benefits of fermented soy. What does fermented soy do? It adheres to estrogen receptor sites on your cells, preventing bad estrogen from stimulating estrogen sensitive tissue. So that's a very good thing. And so you can use fermented soy definitely in the perimenopausal years to help prevent, as they do in various Asian cultures, prevent the incidences of certain female-specific cancers. If you have that running in your family, you can start using that even earlier on in your journey to be a helpful tool in your food arsenal. But if you're using soy, like soy milk for breakfast, soy yogurt for lunch, tofu for dinner, and soy ice cream for dessert, that's when you can have a lot of digestive issues, which then complicate hormonal balance, as well as GMO exposure, as well as pesticide exposure. And if you are somebody who's dealing with, let's say, fibroids, that can complicate things, whereas the fermented soy does not. The processed soy can be having a negative effect on a healthy hormonal balance. I can't hear you, Tammin.
Yeah, Tam, we can't hear you. Oh, she accidentally got muted.
Maybe you got muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. From my mom, so cute, beautiful. She said, if you're postmenopausal, do you have any kind of hormonal?
Yes, Julia. But you don't, but you don't have an infradian rhythm active anymore, right? It's once you have had your last bleed, then the infradian rhythm is not governing your body to the same extent. You're really more back to your circadian self, which is what children have, right? So all children, all men, and all postmenopausal women are circadian based. But women from their first bleed to their last also have, in addition to their circadian clock, this second clock functioning at the same time. So you are both circadian and infradian. And so then what that means is that you can then defer to all the research that's saying intermittent fasting is going to extend your life and protect your brain and protect your heart and optimize your weight. Yes, as soon as I'm postmenopausal, that's what I'll be doing. It is absolutely unquestionably valuable for you. But for those of us who still have it active, an infradian rhythm, intermittent fasting confers the exact opposite results. It worsens insulin sensitivity, it decreases cognitive performance, and it can shrink your ovaries. So this is why it's so important that we have the correct information being shared for women in their reproductive years, because if you're just reading any health article that says, oh, intermittent fasting is good for you and keto is good for you, actually in your reproductive years, it is contraindicated and can give you period problems, fertility problems, mental health destabilization. It's not okay that these articles don't clarify to say that the studies are being done on men and the few that are done on women show that they have these opposite effects. We have to be careful about trying these diets. The only way forward for us as women in our reproductive years when it comes to diet and fitness is by aligning with the infradian rhythm. That's what's so exciting about the cycle syncing method. It is currently the only diet and fitness plan that factors in your biochemistry, your biological clock. Anything else that you are doing to take care of yourself is likely disrupting your infradian rhythm and therefore damaging all of those systems of the body that we talked about. It's just not logical. It doesn't make sense to do, right? So
okay,
that's what book number 2 is about. You gotta read it.
I don't ever want you to go. I feel like, can people book sessions with you, by the way?
There's so many ways to get support. I mean, I built Flo Living because I believe that there should be a global brand that is dedicated to disrupting and improving women's health care, hormonal health care, because we are just not getting correct information that actually allows us to take action to feel good and to get healthy and to prevent these disorders. And so I wanted to build that, and I'm really proud that I have, and it is available to you everywhere, and it is a first. So, take advantage of all the things. For example, I put a few links up here for you in the chat. When you purchase the book, if you go to this book website that I built, you can get immediate downloadable helpful things that are going to help you start to take care of your infradian rhythm, right? The app is the only app that talks about the cycle syncing method. So it'll tell you where you are, which phase you're in, which foods to eat, which workouts to do. You can, if you're suffering with a menstrual disorder, you already have a diagnosis of PCOS or fibroids or endometriosis, or something is going on with your perimenopause, then you can come to flowliving.com and do monthly flow, which is based on the flow protocol that's described in my first book, Woman Code. You can do sessions with our flow coaches. If you feel like you're suffering from any sort of depletion, whether that be postnatal depletion, even if you had your kids 3 or 4 years ago, if you are on synthetic birth control or have recently come off of it and you don't feel like yourself, that is also a reason why you would have micronutrient depletion. And I would encourage you to check out this very special set of formulations that I put together because I was just so sick of women not having access to correct micronutrient levels at a therapeutic dose to balance the endocrine system. So you can check those out. For those of you who are eager you understand now the infradian rhythm is the way to go, and you want to start cycle syncing with other women around the world who are taking care of their infradian rhythms, come join us in Flow 28 cycle syncing membership. You're going to get meal plans, grocery lists, recipes for each phase of your cycle, workout videos for each phase of your cycle. And we didn't even get to talk about time management today, how you manage your time based on that 25% brain chemistry change, either adds to your stress or decreases your stress. So there's a special time management system that's in the new book. It's the only time management system that includes both the circadian and the infradian rhythm. If you're managing your time exclusively on the circadian clock, you are going to create stress for the adrenals and end up disrupting your cycle, right? We have to start including our biology into our time management. Otherwise, we're going to be never getting out of this low-grade chronic stress that we're all facing as women, as mothers, as entrepreneurs, as working women. We have to take our time back. And so that's in there too. So I'm doing all that I can to build every possible resource to help us get the correct information and to have easy tools to help us get the education gap handled so that we can start feeling healthy and thriving. It's not been easy, but I'm doing my best. What's my opinion on synthetic birth control? I wrote a lot about it. You can Google it. Go to flowliving.com. There's a whole female health library there in the blog, and you can just type in birth control and you will see my extensive opinions on it. But here's the quick and dirty. The quick and dirty is that when you take synthetic birth control, you shut off your infradian rhythm, you shut off the conversation in your brain, your pituitary gland, and your ovaries. So your ovaries are not active. It does not cure any menstrual disorder that you have been prescribed it for at all. It is a Band-Aid. It gives you a false sense of security. And the whole time that you're on it, it is depleting you massively of the very same micronutrients your endocrine system needs to function properly. So when you get off of it, you're actually worse off than when you started. And it can increase massively the rates of depression, requiring you to be on an ancillary medication like an SSRI, and you can have an increased risk of suicide, especially if you start young. And you do not have a real period at all when you're on it. So these are just a quick snapshot of my opinion about it. I think that it is wonderful that women have access and must have access to synthetic birth control. It should be something you have access to when you need. But to use it to fix your period is completely crazy. It does not add up when you look at the science and the fact that it is being thrown to teenage girls and it's never been studied. When the pill was released, it was intended for women who had already finished having all their children, because without proper birth control, women in their late 40s were having their 7th or 8th child. And it was very difficult because of all the postnatal depletion from a micronutrient level for them to stay healthy. Not to mention all the uterine prolapse and vaginal prolapse. I mean, it was just functionally really problematic. So it was a huge breakthrough to be able to control, your own fertility when there was not widespread use of condoms. And we're talking, in the 20s and 30s and 40s, right? So when this came out, it was a big advantage for women. The problem is then we started using it because no other research is being done on women's hormonal health issues. We just started using it to fix things. Like, oh, we don't know what's going on with your hormones. Your hormones are so mysterious and confusing. Let's just shut them off and give you this synthetic medication. But now the research is being done by some really courageous female researchers. And we're finding that actually it has a lot of negative side effects for women, and that the fact that we put teenage girls who their brain has not finished developing until the age of 22, right? So think about what puberty is for. Part of what puberty is for is to develop the rhythmic conversation between the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the ovaries. When you insert synthetic birth control between the ages of 13 and 22, you prevent the complete development of this hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. And there are no studies to show if that ever fully recovers, which means then it forever can affect your future fertility and sex drive. And Dr. Sarah Hill just came out with an important book about literally showing that you are not even yourself when you take this medication. It so profoundly affects your brain chemistry. I mean, I can go on and on. What you need to do is get educated if you are on this medication. Seriously educate yourself. There's a really exciting and important documentary, I'm honored to be a part of it, that Ricky Lake is about to release, called The Business of Birth Control. Look out for it. Sign up for my newsletter so that you can get the special. I'm going to do a special screening and talk to both of them live so we can talk more about birth control, and you'll get all that information if you're registered with us on our list. So you can just go to Flo Living and do that. Let me see if there's another question.
One last question. I know you have to go, but so grateful again.
Oh, this is so fun.
Last question, and then I think it's have you ever studied the connection between impulse control disorders, OCD, and periods? I have trichomania. My gyno put me on the pills and it changed my life in a good way since he saw the hormonal connection. But now that I'm off the pills, it is back full force. Not that that's your focus. Maybe it can be one day.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there is a connection between what happens with your mood and what is happening with your hormonal fluctuations, right? So that is 100% something that is a connection. And I think that what you want to do is look at where is the breakdown. For example, do you have the crisis of the habit during the luteal phase, which is where I would guess it would be more acute? And the reason why I would guess it would be more acute there is because without adequate levels of progesterone is this very important hormone that has a very calming and soothing effect on your brain chemistry. Without adequate production of progesterone, then we have anxiety, insomnia, and more. It can really just go off the rails with, these issues. And so instead of just being on synthetic progestin, what if you were to get your levels of progesterone measured and work with a compounding pharmacy to give you a perfect dose just for you of bioidentical progesterone that you would take at the right time? And that should help things. Now, the OCD is a separate issue that has to do with a different region of the brain that controls fear and the release of fear. And for that, there is an enormous body of research on CBD and its support of OCD. Now, it's CBD, not the psychoactive THC, but CBD in particular. So I would have you explore some of that, and likely the combination of you using CBD in conjunction with bioidentical progesterone, exactly titrated for the levels that you need, could be equally as effective, if not more effective, than taking synthetic medication every single day without the side effects of all the micronutrient depletion. And also I would back up to say, because I remember you raised your hand before about training. Overtraining with exercise is going to tax your adrenals. And every time you ask your adrenals to burn through their reserve, you're going to exacerbate this issue in your mental health, right? So training according to your cycle is starting to cycle sync your fitness is going to really massively reduce chronic low-grade stress that's going to exacerbate this, and could help really alleviate that at a deeper root cause. I'm somebody who's interested in getting at why is this happening functionally in the body, as opposed to just figuring out, well, what can we take to suppress something, right? And if you've had a history of dieting and over-exercising, that can absolutely disrupt your endocrine system and your mental health, because they are inextricably linked. And so the answer is not just taking synthetic birth control. The answer is addressing those things with love, with compassion, with patience, because it's not just you, sister. It's so many people. And
they're so complex. And I think that's when you're in relationships with men, they don't realize that there is fluctuations weekly in how you feel and how
or women.
Yeah,
right?
I think for women, yeah, like for us, it's just like there are some weeks that I don't have any patience, and my anxiety is wildly off the charts. And then there's other weeks where I am as cool as a cucumber and willing to pragmatically talk through any subject.
So, but here's the thing. I don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes, any negative stereotypes.
Right.
If you feel like you cannot have, if you're having wild mood swings, that's a sign of a hormonal imbalance. That's a sign of infradian disruption. That's a biofeedback from your body saying you have to dig deeper and do more to support your system. Because my experience of my cycle is PMS free, is mood swing free, is acne breakout free, is cramp free. This is what you are designed to experience. I did not do anything magical except what I am telling you to do, which is to support these hormonal patterns. Somebody asked an important question about hormonal acne. Let me get a close up here, used to have cystic acne all over my face, chest, and back, to the point where it would take me a half an hour of spackling with under eye concealer that was thick enough to cover the redness before I could go outside. Acne is the result of endocrine dysfunction and hormonal imbalance. So somebody's asking, what can I eat to help with hormonal acne? I'm going to give you two things you can do right now, but then I want you to start cycle syncing your food. Okay. You're going to get the book and you're going to start cycle syncing your food, because the long-term solution is not to spot treat. If you're spot treating any symptom, it's going to come back, right? If you want to get to the root cause, you got to support the infradian rhythm. And the only way to do that is the cycle syncing method. So what you can do the week before, right? So as soon as, in fact, I would say you likely have issues during ovulation as well, because you're probably breaking out a little bit on your chin during ovulation. That has to do with your liver not breaking down estrogen quickly enough. So I want you to just start taking 2 tablespoons of flaxseed every day. And then the week before your period, start eating cilantro every day. Cilantro and flax are going to help your liver do its detoxification. I had a journalist years ago. She heard me say that on one of my, we have all these audio classes at Flo Living, and one of them was on acne. She's like, all right, this is crazy. I'm going to try this, and I'm going to write an article about how it didn't work. And then she emailed me and she goes, I was going to write this article about how this couldn't possibly work. And I have had so much acne my whole life. And now I can't believe it. After one cycle, it's gone. She was shocked. Anyway, so there's a whole article on, it's either Well and Good or Mind Body Green, about her story about the flax and the cilantro. But understanding, why am I saying, why are those 2 foods magical? Well, because the flax is going to help increase the transit time in your large intestine. Every time your liver breaks down estrogen, you have to then poop. If you don't poop often enough without using diuretics like caffeine to get it out, it means you're constipated, which means then the estrogen recirculates in your system and can stimulate your sebaceous glands, and boom, you have more acne. And then if you don't have enough micronutrients to store in the tissue of your own liver to go through the 3 phases of liver detoxification to break down that estrogen, it's not even going to get into the large intestine. So by using them in combination, these are just 2 foods. When you start cycle syncing all of your foods, you are using food as medicine each and every day to support each of these hormones. It is amazing what can happen to you in the course of one cycle when you change what you're eating in the right way. And I'm just so passionate about you having that information, because you can feel so much better so quickly. So I hope you're all.
Last question. Someone asked, what do you think of Colonics? I went through a big phase of Colonics, but yeah, not anymore, but I'd like to know your take.
I think they have their place in specific situations. But I think if you are eating proper, your system is designed to eliminate properly, right? And daily. So if you're having, you should easily be having 2 bowel movements a day without coffee. I haven't had coffee in 20 years. And I wake up in the morning, somebody just went, what? I did read my article on caffeine in the book or in the blog. 50% of the population does not make enough of the enzyme that's coded from the CYP1A2 gene. And if you're struggling with hormonal issues, it's likely that you are one of those women and people who are not making enough of this enzyme, which means that caffeine is not breaking down in your system. Anyway, that's a whole other tangent. If you waking up in the morning, you should have a glass of water about this size. What is this? 10 ounces of water, right? This is dandelion tea, in case you're wondering what I'm drinking. I drink a lot of dandelion tea. And so you have, I wake up in the morning, I drink my water. By the time I'm done brushing my teeth, all I've done is stand up, drink said water, brush teeth. Then I have to poop immediately. Undeniable urge to poop happens, have to do it. Lovely poop. And then around 2 or 3 o'clock, I have my second bowel movement for the day, right? That's healthy bowel function. If it's not that, if it's like, oh, I got to drink a couple cups of coffee, I don't know when it's going to happen. Sometimes I don't poop, or before my period, during my luteal phase, I don't poop at all. Then we got problems, right? And then those are going to compound month over month, and then you're going to have more issues. You're going to start to have funky sweat. You're going to start to break out, and then it just keeps compounding from there. So colonics should not be relied on, but they can be a helpful tool on occasion.
Everyone's like wanting to change their life right now.
Well,
But
I hope you feel inspired. I hope you're feeling inspired to educate. I know I talk fast, and I open up the water, what's the fire hydrant. Mm-hmm. I have to say, I'll share why I do that. Okay. When I write books, when I speak, I'm often given feedback of like, women, they can't handle too much science, and, you have to keep it really upbeat, and can't, I've gotten that feedback before. And I just think that's ridiculous, because you guys have the more powerful brain. And that's by the way, that's in section 1 of the book. I outline for you in the flow, just what you've got under the hood that you have been misled about. And I like to educate you. Yes, there's an audiobook, and it's me. So if you happen to have liked the sound of my voice today, you're going to have me reading you the book. Both of the books are me. And yeah, I want to give women the correct scientific information, because that's the whole problem. Without correct language, the proper understanding of the science, and to give it to you as much as humanly possible in the time that I can, we're not going to make any progress. So yeah, I do lay it on as heavy and as hard as I can, because I know you need it. And I know that you are absolutely ready to receive it and run with it.
So for everyone in the chat, there are Alisa's website, and there's a Cycle Synching membership, also her books. I think everything's in the chat. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Woman Code doesn't have its own book website. You can just go to Amazon for that, but everything else I think is there.
I just don't want you to leave, so I'm like, how do I get her back in my life? Are you sure we can see you again? This is it.
Listen, I love it. I'm open. It's always fun whenever women are gathered to learn about their bodies. That's where I want to be. So, let me know how I can continue to support your community. And also, please, I've got some exciting things coming up to do more with education. So get on my list and tell your friends about it. And then we'll just keep collaborating, because I think how we change the world as women is together. Mm-hmm. When I look back at anything from the 20th century about how women have made changes, important changes in our cultural narrative, it's been through everybody holding hands and doing it together. So that's my way of saying, I've got a really big, important idea. I've done all the hard work and the research, but in order for this to become a mainstream, normal, every single woman knows about it, like, duh, you haven't heard about the Circadian Rhythm, what's wrong with you? That kind of a thing, that kind of a tipping point. I am going to need everybody's help to share that. And so thank you, Tammin, for using your platform. So important to share this message with women. And I do believe that a new day, a new future for women's health can be around the corner if we get this information out. So I am really grateful.
Well, thank you so much. I'm grateful I found you 4 years ago. You've changed my life, but then I've gotten back to my bad habits. So I'm ready to starting today.
Let's get you back in the flow, girl.
Cilantro and flax going to the grocery. I'll probably be pooping 4 times a day. I'll be like, it's all the flax I'm eating. But at least my estrogen will be better.
That's right.
Thank you so much. And thank
You're
everyone
so welcome.
for joining. We recorded this, so when everyone leaves, I'll make sure to upload it on the site. And then I will promote it through my social so you guys can find it as well. But thank you everyone for joining. And
Thanks,
I will see you
everybody.
again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.